If you're spending your pension money on supermarket blueberries, you might be ignoring a fruit that grows closer to home, does more for your heart and immune system, and costs you almost nothing once it's established. Everyone says blueberries are the king of superfruits, but the berry that quietly protected whole communities through harsh winters is almost gone from our gardens. In this video, you're going to discover a forgotten native superfruit that can beat blueberries on the tests that actually matter and why almost no one grows it anymore. And if you stay with me until the end, you'll hear the one simple planting trick that makes this lost fruit tough enough for real backyards in places like the United States, Canada, and the UK, even if your soil is poor, your body is tired, and you don't have time to babysit plants. Before we dive in, if you care about growing powerful plants that actually serve your aging body instead of just following food trends, hit subscribe right now so you don't miss the next forgotten crop we bring back to life. All right, let's talk honestly. If you're over 40, maybe over 50 or 60, your body has changed. Your joints talk back when you bend over too long. Your doctor may have mentioned blood pressure, cholesterol, blood sugar, or keeping inflammation down. You feel every winter more than you used to. And at the same time, food has turned into a business of trends and buzzwords. Every few years, there's a new superfood that promises miracles. Blueberries, goji, acai, exotic powders in shiny bags. But here's the part almost no one says out loud on YouTube. A lot of these trendy fruits are expensive, travel thousands of miles, and don't actually fit the climate or soil in your own backyard. You might be carefully buying little boxes of blueberries every week, especially if you live in the US or Canada, because you've been told they are the healthiest berry you can eat. Maybe you've even tried to grow blueberries at home in zones like 5, 6, or 7, and then discovered they can be fussy. They want acidic soil, they sulk if your pH is wrong, and the harvest is tiny for all the work. Meanwhile, there's a different berry that once grew on farms, homesteads, and along hedgerows. A berry used by local communities long before anyone had heard the word superfood. A berry that, in lab tests, often shows higher antioxidant scores than blueberries. A berry that laughs at cold winters in much of the United States and Canada and handles the kind of conditions that make blueberries give up. And almost no one talks about it. In a moment, I'll tell you exactly what this fruit is called. But first, let's slow down and make a deal. For the next few minutes, forget the supermarket marketing. Forget what the labels at the health store say. Instead, think like your grandparents or your great-grandparents. They didn't buy wellness in tiny plastic clamshells, they grew it. This video is for you if you're tired of hype and want something real. If you're in your 40s, 50s, 60s, or beyond. If you garden in places like Zone 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, or even 8 in North America or the UK, and you want plants that actually match your climate, your budget, and your energy level. Here's what you and I are going to walk through together today. First, we'll look at the myth of blueberries as the untouchable king of superfruits, and talk honestly about what happens to them between the farm and your kitchen. Then I'll reveal this forgotten native superfruit, explain where it comes from, and share why it quietly outperforms blueberries on the tests scientists actually run in the lab. Next, we'll dig into the uncomfortable truth. If this fruit is so powerful, why did farmers and gardeners stop growing it? The answer has more to do with taste, marketing, and money than with the plant itself. After that, we'll get practical. I'll show you how to grow this fruit at home, step by step, in a way that works with an aging body. Fewer hours bent over, less spraying, less worry. We'll talk about where it fits in your garden, from small suburban yards to rural plots. And finally, we'll look at how to harvest, store, and use it in simple, everyday ways. No fancy recipes needed, just easy habits that quietly protect your health over time. And remember, near the end, I'll share the #1 mistake that makes new growers give up on this plant, and the simple habit that turns it into a long-term, low-effort powerhouse in your garden. Let's start with something you already know very well, the blueberry story. For years, magazines, websites, and even some doctors have called blueberries one of the healthiest fruits on Earth. You see photos of perfect, plump, deep blueberries sprinkled over yogurt, poured into cereal, baked into muffins. In North America and the UK, they've become a symbol of clean eating. But ask yourself a simple question. How often are the blueberries you buy actually fresh from a local, unsprayed patch, and how often are they shipped in, picked before they were fully ripe, and stored for days or weeks before they reach your plate? If you live in the northern United States or in Canada, your local season for truly fresh blueberries is short. The rest of the year, most store berries have traveled long distances. They may look beautiful, but they are often grown in big monoculture fields, sprayed and pushed for shelf life, not for deep nutrition. And then there's the cost. If you're on a fixed income, buying a small plastic box of berries every week adds up. You might feel a little guilty when you put them in the cart, but you also feel scared not to because everywhere you turn, people keep repeating the message. You need blueberries for your brain, your heart, your memory. Here's the blunt truth almost no one spells out. Blueberries are good. They are not the problem. The problem is the way we've turned one single fruit into a health religion and ignored other fruits that quietly do as much or more, especially fruits that actually like the climates where you and your garden live. In other words, it's not that blueberries are bad, it's that the story is incomplete. And hidden inside that incomplete story is a huge opportunity for home gardeners like you. Now it's time to talk about the fruit almost nobody mentions. The one your grandparents might have known, but supermarkets and big marketing forgot. I'm talking about Aronia. Some people call it chokeberry. Don't let the name scare you. We're going to talk honestly about what it tastes like, how it behaves in the garden, and why this tough, dark little berry quietly beats blueberries on some of the tests that really matter for an aging body. Aronia is a native shrub in parts of North America. It wasn't invented in a lab. Long before anyone said superfood, people used it as a practical, dependable fruit. They dried it, cooked it, and used it in simple ways to get through long cold months. The berries are small, dark purple to almost black when ripe. That deep color is your first clue. Plants do not make that kind of color for decoration. They make it as armor, to protect themselves from sun, cold, and stress. And when you eat that pigment, your body borrows that armor. Lab tests that measure antioxidant capacity and certain plant compounds often show Aronia scoring higher than blueberries. You may have heard about things like anthocyanins and polyphenols. You do not need to remember the names. What matters is this. Aronia is one of the most concentrated sources of these protective compounds that we can grow in an ordinary garden. But here is the strange part. If the science looks so good and the plant is so tough, why don't we see Aronia bushes on every corner in the US, Canada, or around cottage gardens in the UK? This is where the story gets uncomfortable and very useful for you as a gardener. The first truth is simple. Aronia is not a candy fruit. When you pick it straight off the bush and eat it raw, it can taste tart, a little astringent, sometimes even a bit dry in your mouth. It's not the soft, sweet dessert berry that children grab by the handful. And in modern supermarkets, sweetness sells, children's taste sells, sugary breakfast ads sell. So the fruits that win are usually the ones that are easy to eat as a snack, straight from the box, even if that means less depth of nutrition. The second truth is that Aronia doesn't fit the picture-perfect marketing image. It's not a soft, shiny Instagram berry. It's a workhorse fruit, the kind of plant that quietly does its job in the corner of a yard, year after year, without drama. That quiet strength is a blessing for a home gardener with an aching back, but it is boring for big advertising campaigns. So over time, farms and companies chose fruits that were easier to sell, sweeter to taste, and easier to fit into the idea of a healthy lifestyle they could package. Aronia bushes were pulled out, ignored, or left to hedgerows. The knowledge of how to use them faded. In many places, the only people who kept using Aronia were small growers, homesteaders, and certain regions where traditional recipes survived. Meanwhile, the rest of us were told the story that blueberries were the only real berry heroes. And there is one more piece that almost nobody says out loud. Modern agriculture likes uniformity, huge fields of one plant, one look, one size, one schedule. Aronia is strong, but it doesn't fit the narrow, polished image that supermarkets want. It is more of a hedge, a shrub, part of a mixed, diverse planting. It belongs in living landscapes, not in endless, straight rows of factory farming. For you, as a gardener, that is excellent news. It means Aronia feels at home in real yards and gardens, not just on giant farms. It can sit in a mixed hedge. It can mark a boundary line. It can be a backdrop for flowers. It can blend into an edible landscape. It doesn't demand to be the star of a perfect monoculture field. Think about what that means if you are in your 50s or 60s, gardening in a place like Zone 4 in Minnesota, Zone 5 in Wisconsin, Zone 6 in Pennsylvania, or even cooler parts of the UK. Your winters are cold. Your summers can be short. You might not want to gamble on a delicate plant that sulks every time the weather swings. Aronia has already proven itself in that kind of climate. It can handle real frost. It can handle heat. Once it's settled in, it rarely needs spraying. The same pigments that make it so dark and rich also help protect it from stress. You're not begging it to survive. You're mostly just staying out of its way. So, to answer the big question clearly, no, Aronia did not disappear because it was weak or useless. It disappeared because it was honest. It did not pretend to be dessert. It did not bow to supermarket fashion. It simply offered dense nutrition, resilience, and a different kind of beauty. And the modern food system did not know how to package that. But you are not a supermarket. You are a gardener. You don't have to follow the same rules. If you have ever felt frustrated that you pour time, money, and energy into fragile crops that collapse in one bad season, Aronia is the exact opposite of that. It is a plant that pays you back more the longer you let it stay. Now, let's answer the question that's probably sitting in your mind. In real life, for a real person in their 40s, 50s, 60s, or beyond, is this berry actually better than blueberries, or is that just a dramatic headline? To keep it simple, let's break it into 3 areas: what the lab sees, what the plant does in the garden, and what your body feels over time. First, the lab. When scientists test berries, they look at things like antioxidant capacity and certain plant compounds that help protect cells from damage. You may have heard words like polyphenols and anthocyanins. These are some of the natural chemicals that give dark fruits their color and their protective power. When berries are lined up and tested, Aronia often sits right at the top of the chart. In many cases, it scores higher than blueberries for antioxidant capacity, That means gram for gram, it can offer more of those protective compounds than the berry that gets all the magazine covers. Now, this doesn't mean blueberries are useless. They are still good. But it does mean the story you've been told, that blueberries are the one and only king, is not the full picture. What matters for you is this. As you age, your body deals with more wear and tear. You notice it in your joints, your energy, your skin, your recovery after a long day in the garden. The more gentle, natural support you can give your cells over time, the better. A powerful dark berry like Aronia is one of the ways to quietly feed that support into your everyday life without needing to buy expensive imported powders or fancy supplements. Second, the plant in the garden. Think about the work you have to do for many popular fruits. Blueberries, for example, often need acidic soil. If you live in a place with neutral or alkaline soil, you may have to adjust pH, add special compost, or plant them in containers with specific mixes. They can sulk if you get it wrong. They can crop poorly. They can demand attention. Aronia is different. It tolerates a wider range of soils. It can handle clay, loam, even slightly sandy ground, as long as it's not waterlogged all the time. It's happy in full sun and cooler climates, and it can take some light shade. It is naturally hardy in many parts of the northern United States and Canada, and it can grow well in cooler, temperate parts of the UK. If you're in USDA zones roughly 3 to 7, you're in a comfortable range for most Aronia varieties. It can handle winters that would kill more delicate fruits. That means less worry about babying it through every cold snap. For an older gardener, this is huge. You don't want a plant that needs constant tending and special care. You want a plant that, once established, you can mostly prune once a year, water in dry spells, and then leave to get on with its job. And that brings us to the third area, what your body feels over time. Let's be honest, no single berry will erase every health issue. That's not how nature works. But there is a big difference between depending on supermarket fruit that traveled 1,000 miles and eating something dark, fresh, and strong that you picked yourself. When you grow Aronia in your own yard, you are not just chasing a trend. You're building a habit. You can toss a handful of frozen berries into your morning oatmeal, blend a few into a smoothie, simmer them gently with other fruits for a simple sauce, or dry them for winter. You're giving your body a regular, steady stream of protective plant compounds. And because the bush is hardy and generous, you're not afraid to eat them. You're not rationing out an expensive little box from the store. You're using what you grew in the quantity you choose without guilt. This matters deeply for older viewers like you, especially if you're on a fixed income or watching every grocery bill. Investing once in a few Aronia bushes and taking care of them in the first year or two can give you years of harvest with very little extra cost. Now, you might be thinking, that all sounds good, but how do I fit this into my actual garden? Where do I plant it? How much space does it need? Will it clash with my other plants? That's exactly where we're going next. Let's walk through exactly how to grow Aronia in a real yard in the United States, Canada, or the United Kingdom in a way that respects your age, your back, and your energy. Think of this part as your simple roadmap, where to put it, what it needs, and how to care for it with the least amount of fuss. First, let's talk about where it can live. Aronia is naturally hardy in many cooler climates. If you're in the northern United States or much of Canada, there's a good chance you're in a comfortable zone for it. It does very well in many areas that fall around USDA zones 3, 4, 5, 6, and even 7. That includes places with real winters, snow, frost, the kind of cold that makes more delicate plants complain. In the UK, Aronia can handle the cooler, temperate climate in much of England, Scotland, and Wales. It does not need a long, hot summer to produce. It actually enjoys a good winter rest. So, if you've ever felt like your climate is too harsh for special fruits, this plant is on your side. Next, sunlight and placement. Aronia likes full sun in cooler climates. If you can give it 6 hours or more of direct sunlight, it will reward you with better flowering and more fruit. In hotter regions at the edge of its comfort zone, it can tolerate a little light shade in the afternoon. Because it's a shrub, not a little bush, you can use it as part of your garden structure. Mature plants can reach around 4 to 8 feet tall, depending on variety and pruning. That makes them perfect for a loose hedge along a fence line, a backdrop for lower flowers and herbs, or a fruiting screen to give you privacy. If your back doesn't like bending and crawling, placing Aronia along the edge of a bed or path is a smart move. That way you can reach it for pruning and picking without climbing into the middle of your garden. Now let's look at soil. One of the blessings of Aronia is that it's not as picky as blueberries. It will tolerate many normal garden soils, clay, loam, even some sand, so long as water does not sit around its roots for days. It does not demand very acidic soil. Neutral to slightly acidic is usually fine. If your soil is poor, don't worry. You don't need to dig a giant, perfect bed. Here's a simple approach that works well for older gardeners. Step 1. Clear a wide circle where you want to plant, at least as wide as your outstretched arms. Remove grass and tough weeds so they don't compete with your new shrub. Step 2. Dig a planting hole that is roughly twice as wide as the pot your Aronia came in, and about the same depth. If the soil is heavy clay, break up the sides and bottom so roots can explore, but do not fill the hole with a completely different soil. You want the roots to move naturally into your native ground. Step 3. Mix some well-rotted compost into the top layer of soil you removed. You don't need fancy products. A few shovels of good compost are like giving your new plant a welcome meal. Avoid strong, fresh manure. It can be too harsh for young roots. Step 4. Set the plant so that the top of its root ball is level with the surrounding soil. Not buried deep, not sitting high and exposed. Gently spread out any circling roots with your fingers. Step 5. Backfill with your soil and compost mix, pressing lightly with your hands or feet to remove air pockets. You don't need to stomp hard, just firm it enough so the plant feels steady. Step 6. Water deeply. Let the water soak down into the root zone, then add a layer of mulch like shredded bark, leaves, or straw around the base, leaving a small gap right near the stem so it doesn't stay wet against the bark. That mulch is your friend. It keeps moisture in, keeps weeds down, and protects the soil. For older gardeners, that means less weeding, less watering, and less bending. Now, what about spacing? If you want a hedge, plant Aronia shrubs about 3 to 5 feet apart, depending on how dense you want the row. If you're placing single shrubs as accents, give them enough space to spread quietly without crowding. Again, around 4 to 6 feet from other large plants is usually comfortable. Once the plants are in the ground, the first year is mostly about roots. You may see some flowers and even a little fruit, but the most important job that first season is to help the plant settle in. Your job in year 1 is simple. Water deeply during dry spells, especially in the first summer. Keep weeds and grass from choking the base. Check the mulch and top it up if it thins out. You do not need to drown it. Think deep and occasional, not little and often. That encourages the roots to go down, which makes the plant more drought-resistant later. In year 2 and 3, you'll start to see more flowers and clusters of dark berries. The bushes will thicken. You might gently prune out any dead or damaged branches at the end of winter, but you do not need to shape it like a showpiece. This is a practical workhorse, not a topiary. For many older gardeners, the key is this. Once Aronia is established, it doesn't ask for constant attention. You can check on it as part of your normal walk around the yard. A little pruning here, a little mulch there, and it keeps on giving. Let's move into the part most people rush and then regret: harvesting, using, and storing this fruit the right way. And then, we'll talk about the one big mistake new growers make that ruins both flavor and yield, and how you can easily avoid it even if you're new to this. First, let's talk about what ripe Aronia actually looks and feels like. When the berries are ready, they turn a deep, almost black-purple color. If you stand back, the clusters look like someone hung little beads of ink on the branches. That intense color is a sign that the pigments and protective compounds have built up inside. Don't just look at one berry on the outside of the cluster. Gently check a few. A ripe berry should feel firm but not rock hard. If it's still pale or red, or if it feels very hard, it's not ready yet. Many new growers get nervous about birds and weather and pick too early. That is the first half of the big mistake. Underripe Aronia will taste sharper, more astringent, and less pleasant. You might bite into it and think, "Oh no, this is too strong. I don't like this fruit at all." But when you wait until the berries are fully colored and have had time to hang on the bush, something changes. The flavor deepens. The tartness softens slightly. It's still not a candy fruit, but it becomes much easier to work with in the kitchen. So when you think they might be ready, give them an extra week or so if the weather allows. Taste a berry or two from different parts of the bush. Let your own tongue tell you. Now, how do you actually harvest them without hurting your back? Instead of bending low, remember what we did with placement in part 4. If you planted Aronia along a path or at the front edge of a bed, you can stand comfortably and use one hand to hold a branch while the other hand gently strips a cluster into a bowl or container. You don't have to pick each berry one by one unless you want to. You can also sit on a low stool or garden seat and move along the row. The key is to work at a height that respects your knees and spine. There is no prize for suffering. Once you have your berries in the kitchen, this is where many people freeze. They stare at the bowl and think, "Now what? Do I need some complicated recipe?" You don't. Here are simple, realistic ways to use Aronia in everyday life, especially if you're in your 40s, 50s, 60s, or beyond, and you want steady support, not a one-time miracle. First, freezing. Rinse the berries gently, let them dry on a clean towel, then spread them in a single layer on a tray. Once they're frozen, tip them into bags or containers. That way they don't clump into one giant block. You can pour out a handful whenever you like. Each morning, you can toss a small handful into warm oatmeal or porridge. As they heat, they soften and release their dark color, turning your breakfast into a simple, powerful tonic. No special recipe, just oats, water or milk, and a spoon of berries. Second, blending. If you already drink smoothies, add a few frozen Aronia berries to your usual mix. Combine them with a sweeter fruit you enjoy, like banana, apple, or pear, and let the blender do the work. You'll notice the deep color, but the flavor will be balanced by the other fruits. Third, gentle cooking. You can simmer Aronia with apples or pears and a little water until the fruit softens. Then sweeten lightly with honey or a bit of sugar if you wish. You do not need to make a formal jam. You've simply created a simple fruit compote that you can spoon over yogurt, pancakes, or toast. The goal is not to copy fancy health recipes. The goal is to weave this berry quietly into the food you already eat. Now let's come back to that big mistake. We already talked about the first half, picking too early. The second half is just as serious, picking proudly, and then not using them. Many people try Aronia once, harvest a big bowl, feel excited, then leave it sitting in the fridge until it spoils. Or they throw the berries into a bag in the freezer and forget them for years. Later they say, "That plant is okay, but I never really did anything with it." That is how powerful plants get labeled as disappointing, not because they failed, but because nobody built a small habit around them. So here's the simple habit that makes Aronia a joy instead of a regret. Decide one easy way you will use it regularly and make that part of your routine. Maybe it's every weekday morning a handful in your oatmeal. Maybe it's every Sunday a small pot of mixed fruit compote that lasts a few days. Maybe it's every afternoon a small smoothie with whatever fruit is in the house. It doesn't need to be dramatic, it just needs to be regular. Imagine this. It's the middle of winter in Minnesota, or Ontario, or the north of England. The garden is sleeping under snow or cold rain. Fresh fruit at the store is expensive and bland. But you walk to your freezer, open a bag of dark berries you grew yourself, and pour life into a pan or a bowl. You're not just saving money, you're feeding your older body with something real, strong, and rooted in your own soil. And then think of the garden in summer. A simple hedge or row of shrubs covered in white blossoms in spring, then heavy with dark clusters in late summer. Birds visiting, leaves turning beautiful shades in autumn. One plant giving you food, beauty, and a sense of connection. That is what we gave up when we let Aronia disappear from our yards. And that is what you can quietly take back, one shrub at a time. If this idea speaks to you, if you don't just want to follow food trends, but want to grow the powerful plants that marketing forgot, then you're exactly who this channel is for. Before you click away, do one thing. Hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications. Every week, we bring back another lost plant or crop that actually works for real people in real gardens in the US, Canada, the UK, and beyond. Plants that respect your age, your budget, and your body. And if you want to go deeper, leave a comment below and tell me where you garden from, your state or province, your zone if you know it, and whether you like to see more videos about forgotten fruits like this. Thank you for staying with me all the way to the end. Your time and attention are valuable, especially at this stage of life. May your garden and your health be stronger for it.